The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 312 with Mark Immelman from the On the Mark podcast. Welcome back to the 18 Strong Podcast, where we believe the stronger you are, the better you play. This podcast, as always, is brought to you by Linksole, our favorite brand of golf apparel, on the course, off the course. In fact, just recently I was talking to my buddy Nick Mueller from the Mobility Caddy, and he was asking, what is it about the Linksole gear that you guys love so much? And I said, you know what? It's basically because I literally can wear it almost anywhere. I mean, I wear it night and day. I wear it to work. I wear it to the golf course. I wear it casually. Sometimes I even I've got my bamboo 5-pocket pants on right now. Sometimes I wear that during my workouts if I'm stuck at the gym and forgot a pair of shorts. So it's so versatile. You can wear it anywhere. Fits my style, and I know it fits a lot of yours. So if you want your 20% discount on anything that Linksole offers, go to 18strong.com/Linksole and you can check it out. Go look at all their items. Bubba is their newest ambassador. He's the newest part of the team. You're going to be seeing a lot more of Linksole in the up and coming golf days. I am really, really excited about this week's episode. We have Mark Immelman from the On the Mark podcast. Yes, the last name Immelman you recognize from his younger brother Trevor, who won the Masters. And Mark has a long history in the world of golf himself, playing at a high level, playing collegiately, coaching collegiately, and now we see him on a lot of the different broadcasts with CBS, PGA Tour Live, and he has one of the top golf shows out there on iTunes, Stitcher, all the other podcast avenues. So I'm excited to bring Mark on the show to talk about really a little bit everything in golf. The current condition of golf, how COVID has helped the game, actually, and how the game has kind of exploded, what's going on with the distance, quote-unquote, problem that everybody's talking about these days with the USGA and the new report, and also just, what are the things that he, as a very high-level instructor, is seeing with his golfers. What are the things that they're struggling with? What are the things that you and I and all of the other golfers out there that are trying to get better at this game, what are we struggling with? So it's really kind of been cool to get Mark's take, a guy who is on a weekly basis seeing the best in the world, walking side by side with them down the fairway, then also working with golfers just like you and I on the lesson range and everything in between. So you're really going to enjoy this episode with Mark Immelman. I do want to remind you that we now have the 18 Strong Golf Fitness app up and running, and you have the opportunity to go get a 7-day free trial. Check it out. Most golfers that I know don't have any kind of a plan when it comes to their fitness routine. They're either grabbing the exercise from Instagram or YouTube or reading a magazine and just kind of searching and not really knowing what they need to do to play their best golf, to become the strongest version of themselves. Well, we here at 18 Strong, we have a mission this year in 2021, and that is to help 5,000 golfers or more become the strongest version of themselves. And we're going to help do that through using the app, where you have several different programs that you can put on your calendar. It tells you exactly what to do every single day to play your strongest golf. We put in new workouts every single month, or we've got several 8 and 4-week programs that are already built out in there that hundreds, if not thousands, of golfers have already gone through and had great success with. So all you have to do is go to 18strong.com, check out the homepage, and you'll find a video of me right there talking about our new app. So go check that out. All right, let's dive into this episode with Mark Immelman. Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's good to be with you. I hope all's well with you guys.
Everything's good. Everything's good. The world's a crazy place these days, but we're all making do just like everybody else. I think you said you're at home now in between tournaments. You get a little time off in between heading out to Pebble Beach.
Yeah, it's a nice place to be heading out too. I mean, last week San Diego, then a week off at home in Columbus, Georgia. I'm with my college golf team, just giving some lessons and such, which is sort of in my DNA. And then next week Pebble, and then CBS takes a little break before the Masters, and then I'm doing 1 or 2 events for PGA Tour Live, the Players certainly, and then the Match Play, I believe it is. And so I'll have some college golf and that mixed in there, and then of course CBS hits the ground with the Masters and beyond.
Yeah, how much time are you spending with the players, doing the coaching, doing individual lessons with players that aren't on the college squad, outside of all of the broadcasting stuff?
Well, the truth of it is, right now, Jeff, the afternoons now in the springtime are locked up by Columbus State Golf when I'm not away on tour, and so that's a sort of 2 to 5 kind of a regimen. So I'll typically give lessons from like 11 a.m. in the morning till about 2. So I'll see 3 or 4 people, a couple group lessons, and I do that during the week. Weekends I reserve for my family. Um, with the travel, I like to try and make sure we set aside some time, and then we're getting to the stage now where even though it's still in winter, it's getting light enough that after 5 you can still get out and maybe do like an hour or so worth of lessons. So as the days begin to lengthen, I might add 1 or 2 after 5 o'clock, but that's just a function of weather and seasons. That
How about playing yourself? You getting out and swinging the sticks a lot?
that's for various reasons. I don't play as much. One, the frustration of not being able to do what I used to, and then two, when I'm home, I'm inclined to want to be around the family. And as we all know, as much as what I love golf, and golf has really been, it's blessed my life in the biggest way. I love to play it, but when I'm home, I'd rather be with the family. So my daughter, my eldest, plays a little bit, so we'll get out there and sneak 1 or 2 holes, but that's about the extent of it.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about the background of you kind of growing up in the golf family, obviously, that you are, and when you came over to the States, and give us a little insight into the Immelman home as a young golfer.
Well, I'm the eldest of three. I have a sister, Michelle, who's 3 years younger than me, and then my younger brother, Trevor, is about a little bit more than 9 years younger than me, so he was the baby. And I began golf at the age of 13, on the heels of a pretty bad rugby injury. I was just a general all sporter, played rugby and cricket and tennis at a pretty high level, and then got into golf because of the injury to my wrist, and the sort of fell in love, and the proverbial bug bit. And I got to playing, and I got pretty good, and then uh, was a pretty good junior player, but not good enough at that stage because we didn't have a college system in South Africa. So military service was mandatory, and at that stage there was a national golf league, and the Defense Force team had a national team. Incidentally, that team included guys like Ernie Els and Retief Goosen, so the team was pretty sound. Okay, and so I played on the DF team for a while, and then after that again was good, but I didn't feel like I was good enough, and so I caddied for a little while, caddied in Europe and caddied over in South Africa, and I met a guy called Tommy Tolles who used to play at the University of Georgia. Has been a long time PGA Tour player, now in the Champions Tour, and I worked for him, and he introduced me on a week off to his friend, a friend of his, Hugh Royer, who's from Columbus, where I live now. And I worked with Hugh. He had a lot of success. And the one day I played golf with him, and he's like, "What are you doing, caddy?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know what else to do." And so he said, "Well, why don't you go to university, college?" And I was like, "How do you do that?" And so he said, "Leave it with me." So he called up his dad, who was the head professional at a local golf club here in Columbus. Said, "Hey, I got this kid in South Africa. He's good." We sent a video. They offered me a scholarship, and the rest was sort of history. So I came to Columbus, then Columbus College, in the early 90s. I was quite successful. We won a few national championships, and I was an All-America a few times, and so that sort of just, that's how the thing grew. And from there, with Trevor being 9 years younger than me, he just sort of followed along. When I was 13, he was 4, and so when I was 15, he was like 5 or 6, and so he learned to keep up with the big guys quickly, and so that's sort of how he got into the game. And while I was in college, he became the world junior champ, and the rest was sort of history. I ended up back in the States here after working for IMG for a little while when I stopped playing. And that turned, then I, but I, that wasn't sort of my scene. So I got back into teaching, and my old coach from Columbus College, Columbus State, then called me up and offered me the job as the coach. And it was a way to get back into America, which I knew we sort of had to do. And so we moved over here, and the college coaching turned into a lot of lessons, and a lot of lessons turned into a bit more exposure and teaching players and such. And next thing I was in broadcast, radio, television, and so here we are. So it's been serendipitous. It's been a crazy journey as I look back. To think I'm from some small town on the other side of the globe now, being a part of, probably the world's preeminent golf announce crew is sort of mind blowing, to be honest with you.
Growing up through the teaching ranks, who were some of the people that you really leaned on? Do you have any mentors that you really attribute to kind of your style or helping you develop your own style?
Yeah, John Jacobs, I would say, would be the doyen. Mr. Jacobs, he was the doctor of golf. Everyone called him Dr. John, and he was like a human launch monitor. And I was fortunate to meet him once or twice. And funny, as I look back now, when I was a young teenager learning the game in South Africa, we didn't have a bunch of golf magazines and stuff like that. And so my dad got this VHS series of tapes by John Jacobs. And all he talked about was ball flight fundamentals. And that sort of set the tone for me. And then I worked alongside a guy called Robert Baker for a long time, a South African guy. And then David Ledbetter is a huge mentor of mine. But I've picked up a lot of insight and counsel along the way. Gary Player, I'm fortunate to, we've gotten a lot of advice from him. Nick Price, same thing. But I would say sort of John Jacobs, David Ledbetter have probably had the most influence on me as an instructor.
As an instructor, has this whole social media thing, this wealth of knowledge that we all have at our fingertips, which is amazing, but at the same time that can bring a lot of trouble for the golfer who's already grasping at straws, looking everywhere for answers. As an instructor yourself, how has that helped or hindered some of the students coming to see you when they're searching for answers for their particular game, their particular swing?
Well, the truth is, golfers are going to find golf tips anywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
true.
what we do, right? And the stuff is just more readily available on the internet now. But whether it's the internet or whether it's your buddy that you play alongside on Friday morning and you have a drink with in the grill room after, golfers want to get better, so they get information. I think the big thing about internet golf instruction is it's awesome. I wish I'd had the uh, the ability to access information like that when I was young and coming up and learning the game. But the main thing is, and I always maintain this on my podcast, is that information is one thing, but the wisdom and the understanding to use it appropriately is an entirely another. And you wouldn't go and take another man's medicine, yet everyone's doing it in golf. And just because it seems sexy as rip and some guy puts out, or some girl puts out some tremendous content on social media, that doesn't necessarily mean it's applicable to you. And so that's the pitfall of the thing. But in terms of its accessibility and the fact that, you could essentially get a lesson from one of the great minds in the game while you're sitting on the other side of the world. I mean, that is such an advantage as long as you go into the thing eyes wide open and and you have a good understanding of what you're doing. So to me, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, my podcast, it's got such a big reach because people want to get better, but I understand the responsibility of it all, that I can't be throwing stuff out there willy-nilly because I might ruin some golfer with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the whole thing about it to me is information is great, but know when and how to use it, and then you'll probably find your sweet spot.
Yeah, it's challenging. Doing a podcast like you and I both do, bringing on some of the
Mhm.
greatest minds in the game in different facets. It's sometimes it's almost overwhelming for me personally too. Like
Yeah.
this person is brilliant, what they're doing is brilliant, but they speak a little differently than this person over here. And so figuring out and disseminating what facts work for you and what's going to be the right thing can be a struggle. Where would you caution some golfers, aside from just taking random advice, but what are some of the, maybe, I know you've done a lot on myths in the golf swing on your
Yeah.
podcast. I've been listening to a lot of those recently. What are some of the big things that you see the club golfer will say? We're not talking to the professional golfers here, but the club golfers that they're doing that you see as a very common mistake being made, either with the social media stuff or just in them taking in instruction in general.
I would say the club golfer tends to do two things. They make it first off more about technique than they do make it about the skill of the game. And golf is the kind of game where you need a high level of skill to play it consistently well. And so everyone thinks, well, if I do X, then I'm going to get Y. Where it couldn't be farther from the truth, because golf there's so many variables and it's so mercurial. So hanging your hat on one swing adjustment and thinking that's the key is short-sighted, and I think sort of intellectually a little lazy. So that's the one thing that I see a bunch where a player goes for a lesson, they don't get, they get the tip. Let's just package it right, and they get the tip, and then they do it, and it feels great, and they do it in front of the guy, and they do it off a flat lie. Then they go to the golf course, and the whole thing falls apart. Now they don't understand how it's supposed to work. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? What must I do? If it works, what am I going to expect? If it doesn't work, what can I do? It's all that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of the club golfers to me don't bear in mind the unwritten things, the immeasurable things. And that's where the communication and the understanding is brought to bear. And so for me, I would love club golfers to take a more the role of a CEO as it comes to their game. You not just take like one thing and think this is the holy grail to game success. To look at the situation and be the CEO of your own company and say, well, here's the problem, here's the opportunity, this is what I'm able to do, etc. And look at the thing from different pots of call, because one day better golf might be because your rhythm is better. The next day better golf might be because of the swing thought you've gleaned from social media. The next day it might be better because you've gotten a few good lies and your confidence is up. I mean, there's so many things that can change. So to me, I think sometimes a short-sighted approach is a mistake. And the other times thinking that there's some sort of holy grail, because there isn't. And that's the one thing I think in my memoirs, when I had to check out one day, I'd say, look, all things remaining the same, there's no secret to this game except for a complete understanding of who you are, and the fact that golf is, to me, essentially a game of recovery.
How do you get your players to take whatever it might be in that one lesson that you have with them? Say you give them something, you're working on something maybe a little more tactical, but then how do you help them take that and ingrain it or put them into a competitive situation where they can actually use it, or just use the creativity of what that tip may end up bringing to their game?
Well, that's sort of the million-dollar question, and I wish I could give you sort of a one-dimensional answer, but the truth of it is that if you've got 10 individuals, there'll probably be 10 different approaches and 10 different communication styles to get the message to resonate. And that's the main thing. And so what I would do is try and find the individual's currency and understand, okay, what's going to settle with them and how do I help them to understand or make this their own? Because I'm at my best as a teacher when I don't necessarily teach you something, but I pitch you a principle and I help you to understand it to a place where you come up with the idea of it. Because my work with the elite golfers is like, they will come back to me and they'll be like, you know what, I've been working on this and I feel like things have changed. And I'll be like, yeah, that's the kind of the thing we worked on 3 or 4 weeks ago, and now it's become yours.
Right.
Because how I might communicate it might be received differently, and that's where my responsibility is. But I've got to communicate it in a way that it becomes owned, so that when they come back with the idea, then they know this thing inside and out, backwards and forwards, and so it stands the test of pressure and time. And so when it comes to working with different golfers, some folks respond to drills, some folks respond to visuals, some folks respond to audio cues, some folks respond to like sensory kind of deals like feel and visualization skills. So it's a wide ranging thing to me, and you can't package it in one way. But what I always try and do is I'll always tell you, look, here is the principle. Now, where it sits on your spectrum is sort of here. Here's the overall spectrum. We're approaching it from here. You can go to here, but so I'm sort of putting the whole thing in perspective to them and helping them to understand that, look, you might feel like you're on the edge of the boundary for you, but beyond this, in the grander scheme of things, there's still a whole lot of room. So that helps them to a place where they can be experimentational, going, okay, well, this might feel different, but in the grander scheme of things, I'm really just pushing the envelope a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's almost a little bit of that Mr. Miyagi kind of thing where you're kind of bringing it to them, but then until they actually experience it in their own way, they don't really ingrain it. Now you get to see. Go ahead.
It's about ownership. I mean, when it comes right down to it, it is about ownership. It's like when you buy a car for various features, and then when you get in the car, you'll probably discover one or two more features. Then eventually you'll understand exactly how that car performs. You know, how it accelerates, how it brakes. You know, when you get in someone else's car, it feels a little different, even though it might have the same specs in the engine, whatever the case. All the similarities are there, but there again, these unwrittens where when you get to a place of ownership, I feel like is where you at your sweet spot.
When you're out walking the course, because you obviously get to see the greatest players in the world these days on a
Yeah.
weekly basis, really, and you get to see the things that we don't see on the camera. Are there times when you're walking with a foursome or twosome, and you're like, man, I wish they would show this on camera because the regular golfer doesn't see Rory McIlroy hit a shot like that? Or are there situations where you find yourself thinking, man, the regular golfer could benefit from seeing that these guys aren't perfect all the time?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I love PGA Tour Live, because you see the entire round of golf from shot number one to the finish. And you will see the ebbs and the flows of it all. And you'll see how the guy plays his way into the round and perhaps is sort of finding a little something. Then you see the purple patches, and then you see when recovery starts to have to happen. And you'll see good golfers struggle, you know, which is, it's a reality in the game. And so, yes, I wish there were certain situations that people would see more. But you know, a lot of those too is like a lot of what I do, I guess, Jeff, is a function of events to me. Like my podcast happened because I wanted to allow someone on the other side of the globe access to a bright mind. That's how this podcast happened.
Mm-hmm.
It also happened for me because as a bright young instructor with a great future, just because I wasn't on the front of a magazine back in the day, I wasn't as well known. But now we can give people voices, which is why my podcast happened. Now, along those lines, what I write for Golf Magazine, the column, the weekly column I write for them, is a couple things you can learn from the PGA Tour, stuff that I saw. And that might not necessarily be what the winner did. And it certainly won't be me saying to you, well, you've got to ramp up your club head speed to 120 like Rory. It's something that Rory has done that you can do that's not probably going to take as much athletic inclination. So there are odds and ends and bits and bobs really that I wish folks would see. But the thing about that too is the time of being able to then explain it. But once you can help a person to start looking for things like that and sort of stealing with their eyes a little bit, folks will watch broadcasts differently. Because a lot of folks sort of tune out until they see the shot tracer. Folks don't really watch the routine or watch the reaction or watch the response to shots, the awareness of wind direction changes, for argument's sakes. And so, yeah, to your question, long-winded answer, but very much. I wish folks were more tuned to, and I wish more things were shown about what happens sort of between shots and what happens when things aren't going right.
Are there things that we can expect to be changing with the broadcast? I know there's been a big shift in the head, people at the top of the broadcast team, and I know that with COVID and everything that we've been going through and technology advancing, there's a lot of things that can be done that maybe haven't been or they've been wanting to implement. Are there any new things that we can expect to see or that you see coming down the pipe?
I just think you'll see more golf shots. That'll be the big change. There's a lot of the emphasis, certainly, that I've been privy to has been, fewer commercials or fewer interruptions and just more golf. Like on the show, our shows now, they've got a little scoring bug in the corner of the screen at all times. So you don't have to break away from action for 15 seconds so you can go over telling the story of who the leaders are. And so it's things like that. But in terms of segments, for argument's sakes, that get away from the play and sort of might feature something, you'll probably see a little less of that too. So it's just more playing and more the ability to be able to watch the game's very best and how they go about their craft.
What are you, or maybe I should ask what your thoughts are on the whole distance report thing? I know that this is kind of the big talk these days, and I kind of teeter back and forth kind of depending on who I talk to and what the reasons are for scaling things back or letting things go. We obviously heard Rory had very strong feelings that he talked about, and that it's just the 1% that they're kind of targeting and it's not really meant for the regular golfer. What insights can you bring to that to help us kind of maybe clarify first of all, your own take, but also maybe where the two camps are coming from.
My take is I agree wholeheartedly with what Rory had to say. You can't paint things like this in a broad brush. And the truth of it is, on the PGA Tour, the ball is going too far. But these are the best of the very best. And they've got equipment fitted to them and changed and modified and stuff. And so everything is maximized. And then these guys are, playing in an environment that allows them to thrive, where 9/10 of the golfers, probably more, could use the golf ball going a little farther. But I feel like in the same breath, I'm as this instructor in me doesn't want to see speed advertised as much, because all of a sudden, golfers are like, well, I've got to hit the thing farther to score. Now, the only thing hitting the ball farther does is it improves the probability of you making a lower score. It's never meant a lower score ever. And I can point out plenty of long hitters that couldn't break an egg. So and you'll see that with so many players, like Dustin Johnson, for argument's sakes, was great, became really good when he learned to hit a wedge well. Same thing with Justin Thomas. You see the same thing with Rory. He can drive it unbelievably. But if there's an Achilles heel on the greens or around the greens, the scores won't represent that. So I feel like us average golfers should have the benefit of a faster golf ball and a faster club face and a more forgiving golf club. I don't see the problem with that. I think the elite golfers, they should sort of scale it back a little bit, at the highest level, like maybe college and the tours. And then I just feel like I wish they'd emphasize for golfers too that distance is advantageous, but in the end, it's a game of scoring. And if you get good at shot number 3 and 4, you're going to make a bunch of 3s and 4s. If you're good at shot number 1, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make 3s and 4s. So that's sort of where I sit. But the at the PGA Tour level, the game can be slowed down. I'll tell you what, there's been times out there that I've watched a tee shot and I've been like, holy smoke, But you can't say that and I've seen the best of the best since like the mid 1990s. But it's getting crazy now. I mean, the distance these guys hit it, the height they hit it, is just, it's unfathomable. It's truly crazy.
And obviously, I mean, there's a lot of athleticism out there. There's a lot, bodies are changing, workout routines are changing. And I know that that's a piece of it. But do you think that it is mainly or a lot to be said that the equipment itself, the drivers, the shafts, the balls, all of that is really the main contributor to why things are just kind of a little bit out of control as far as the distance is concerned? I heard somebody on a recent podcast, might have been on the No Laying Out podcast, or Jeff Shackelford, talking about, clubs back in the day had a lot more, or clubs and balls. They didn't pierce the wind as much. It was easier to see the flight of the ball and to shape the ball, and that if things were still a little closer to that a guy like Bryson DeChambeau couldn't just simply go for speed, because speed wouldn't allow the balls, the equipment wouldn't allow that to be such a dominating factor.
Yeah, well, if you just look at the history, there's always going to be long hitters and always going to be short hitters. Like when Jack Nicklaus came out, he was hugely longer than everybody else, and they would all tell you that, and so he had the advantage. But he's hugely longer wasn't 340, he's hugely longer was 280 or so, where the average was in the 250 range. So you're always going to have long hitters, and I will tell you this, the advances with the golf ball, I mean, like even I work alongside Bridgestone. What they're doing with the golf ball is crazy with this new cover, this contact cover. But the advances of the golf ball just make it so much more aerodynamic. And so it's becoming supersonic almost, it's never going to be. So the balls are flying better through the air. And then you add to that, because it's more aerodynamic, and with golf clubs being a little bit more forgiving, like the old blade iron versus the modern blade iron are not the same comparison. The modern blade iron is way more forgiving than the old thing used to be. And because these are more forgiving, these guys can just go harder and faster. I mean, if you're swinging a persimmon driver with a sweet spot that's minuscule, you're not swinging like a banshee, because if you miss, the miss was going to be magnified.
Right.
So I think it's certainly athleticism, because these guys are different. When I came out, the average size of the PGA Tour player was kind of my size, sort of 5'10-ish,
Hmm.
6'1". Now you're getting guys that are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". They're strong as oxes. They're fast. They're explosive. So it's a little bit of everything. But the fact that this ball cuts through the wind like it does, and the fact that the clubs are as forgiving as what they are, just allow these athletes to go as hard as they like. And when they're on, it is something to behold. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're only at the beginning of it too. I think with
Yeah.
the way that kids are training now and strength training, and just I think obviously 2020 this year was the biggest year for golf ever. I think as far as introducing new people to the game, more people playing, and I wouldn't doubt if we start to see more people gravitating towards it, and we get more athletes in it. I mean, if you think about having guys like the guys that we're going to see on Sunday playing the Super Bowl, if we have more guys like that are coming into the game of golf, they're going to make Bryson DeChambeau look like Rory Mac, like a guy like us,
Yeah.
5'10". I mean, it's
Well,
crazy.
Gary Player said to me, he goes, Mark, consider when LeBron James decides he wants to play golf.
Yes.
And so you get a specimen like that, and that's what Bryson did. He turned himself into one of these people. And I
Hmm.
wouldn't I wouldn't recommend that to folks because there's so many other factors than just getting stronger and bigger. There's flexibility and mobility and all these other elements about it. But yeah, if you're bigger and you're stronger, you have the advantage. It's been that since Adam and Eve, and it's going to be like that when the Jetsons are playing golf. So yeah, if you have strength and speed on your side, it's going to be an advantage. Again, it never meant that you're going to make a low score, but you have the advantage certainly.
Do you ever think we'll see some sort of bifurcation where there are specific rules for pro tournaments, or is it too? I mean, are we too far gone? Is it too hard to draw the line of where that equipment then
Oh,
stops? Unlike baseball, where you've got the pros play with a wooden bat, anybody else plays
yeah.
with a metal bat, right?
Well, I don't see why we can't do that in golf. But I honestly, to answer your question, Jeff, I really don't know. It's way above my pay grade. It would make a lot of sense, but there's a lot of costs involved too. For all these companies that are investing millions in R&D, golf ball companies, golf club companies, and stuff, they're well invested in this stuff. Now, if some governing body suddenly comes along and says, "Yo, you got to slow this down," I think they're going to be some irate people. So I don't know. It makes sense. Is it going to happen? I don't know. I guess that's the million-dollar question.
I'm gonna just to shift gears here a little bit as we're kind of obviously still in this whole pandemic situation, but fans are starting to come back to golf events and things like that. How has the tour event kind of changed? I know this week at the Waste Management, which obviously you're not there, but there's fans there. Next week at Pebble, are there going to be fans out there too in a limited capacity?
I don't believe they're fans at Pebble. I know there'll be fans. Events are starting to let folks in. I know that the Players Championship are going to allow fans, and there's talk of patrons at the Masters, but no fans. It's made my job on the course a little harder. I'll be honest with you because we
Really?
don't have the ambient noise. Yeah, we don't have the ambient noise to play with. So we've got to be way more cognizant of where we are. The tone of our voice, the modulation of our voice, and that sort of stuff. So, and where we position. So, we've got to be a bit more cognizant of that. But you can see, certain golfers who fan favorites how they get carried along by the energy of the crowd, and so that's sort of gone away some. And then but when it comes right down to it, though, Jeff, in my estimations, whether they're 50,000 people or whether they're no folks, when some guy's coming down the 18th hole and he's got to make a four to win the Masters, he's feeling it inside.
Hmm.
These guys at that stage, they're aware of the crowds and the crowd's adulation are lifting them. It's getting them ramped up. And maybe to me, it helps the golfer when he's going through the lull also. If you're not going well and someone's like, go, let's go, Tiger, and they lift you like that, that's all full. But when you're coming down the last, you got to make four to win, whether there's fans or not. You know about it. These guys are just like you and me. And so from that point of view, it's the same. But I think, from an announcing perspective, it's different. I think from an ambient sound thing, it's different. From hearing player caddy interactions, it's obviously better because you can hear more because there's less buzz from the crowd. And from the player's perspective, yeah, there's some influence certainly, and certain guys they've felt it. But as I say, the truth of it is, you still got to manage your emotions, no matter whether they're fans or not.
For sure. What was your transition from, or what was the catalyst to getting you into the broadcasting piece?
I was sheer serendipity. You know what? I was always a golf instructor, but I always wanted to be sort of have a voice in the game, I guess. And so I'd been on various little magazine shows, and I was on Matt Adams' morning radio show one time on a whim. I just tweeted him, and he had a teacher's on, so I tweeted him. I'm like, "Hey, you want to hear from me?" And so they arranged me, and so I got on. And afterwards, his producer's like, "Well, you sound good, and you know what you're talking about. Have you ever thought about doing this?" And that sort of started the wheels in motion, and I became involved with PGA Tour radio, and it just grew from there. Did I ever think it was going to grow to where it is now? I was hopeful, but it's a competitive industry, and there are not very many spots. So the fact that I've gone from beginning in radio to where I am now is miraculous, really, if you consider it. But the whole thing was that I just wanted to. I'm passionate about this game, and I just love to talk about it. And so yeah, I get to, and I get paid for it at the same time, which is cool.
What's been the most unexpected perk of you turning your show into the podcast and being able to broadcast and continue to put weekly content out?
Oh goodness, you know what's crazy? When I was teaching golf full time, right, and I was working with players on the tours and stuff, and really grinding. Um, I had limited visibility. Now I've got a microphone in front of me. Now more folks want to know my opinion than anyone else, which is kind of nuts, really. But I think through it all, everything I've done is uniquely qualified and situated me for where I am. But in terms of perks and benefits, hey, I guess I can just get into people's door a little easier, because a lot of the instructors they want to be heard from, and they know that mine's not a bad port of call as yours is. And so I think the introductions are made a little easier. That's all.
Awesome. What do you think has come about in the game of golf throughout this whole COVID year, 2020? I mean, obviously we talked about how rounds are up. Golf has kind of exploded. Do you think that this is going to kind of catapult us as far as the industry itself? Do you think it's going to be a blip on the radar because of the situation? Where do you see things going from here?
I hope it catapults us. I hope this is the new benchmark. Um, but you never know. Like you said in broadcast too. As a sport, golf, we're competing with the mainline sports. Now, golf is a mainline sport in the United States, but not in certain other countries. Like most countries, soccer is the main deal because it's easy and it's accessible. Golf is becoming more accessible, but clubs are expensive and stuff. So I hope this kicks something on, and it sets a new benchmark. Um, if I knew the future, I'd I'd go and pick the right lottery numbers, and I'd probably retire. Um, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this kicks on. I'm excited as to what happened. It's sort of sad that something as grisly as a pandemic would cause this, but sometimes you need a pretty big shakeup, and luckily for golf, this has worked out well. So I'm glad that more folks are exposed. I'm glad that more folks are falling in love. I'm certain that places like Top Golf and such are just thriving because of it right now, even with the pandemic. And so, yeah, I would expect that golf has gained a bit of traction. I just hope it's able to build from here.
Same here. I've personally seen a lot of friends, relatives, that have gotten out and played. Maybe guys that haven't played in decades, or guys that really didn't play much at all. They kind of got out a couple times and then got hooked, and it's just been really neat to see. And I think it's brought a little bit of a different feel to the game as well. That people are starting to see that it's not. It doesn't have to be this stuffy country club kind of a thing. You can go out to Forest Park to the local muni and play 9 holes with your buddy and put a speaker on your cart and have a great time. I think it's like you said, it's unfortunate that something so crazy is what has kind of brought this about, but it's a bright spot I think that we have seen in
Well,
2020.
I experienced it today. My morning session of lessons, I had a couple ladies, I had a athletic young businessman. I had a guy from India who'd watch golf on television, then on YouTube, and all of a sudden, he's coming for golf lessons. I asked him more about where the good places were to get Indian food than I think what he got golf tips from me. But so I looked at a pretty eclectic group of folks in my lesson schedule today. And so now that you bring it up, I'm like, this is pretty cool. Ordinarily you'd get sort of the same genre of folks that would show up where it was all mixed up and all different. And that's cool to notice.
I've got a dad question for you. So you said your daughter plays a little bit, enjoys the game. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, she has one of the premier instructors in the world in her house. But if
You
your
wouldn't
house is
believe it.
anything like mine, she probably doesn't listen to what you're telling her to do. How do you approach that with just trying to let her have fun, trying not to give her too much instruction? Where's the balance there?
Oh, it's the hardest thing in the world, Jeff. It's so hard. And I have a younger brother who's been pretty successful in golf, and I've made some inroads and such. And so Isabel, my eldest, she's sort of, no, it doesn't suffer, but there's a bit of a shadow that's cast, and so she doesn't want to let me down when she gets out and plays, which is probably the biggest battle I'm fighting, is to help her understand that you're going to fail at golf and it's okay as long as you do the right thing. So there's been the challenge, but managing the whole dad versus coach thing. You know, when I give advice on my podcast, I say all the right things. And when I'm out there as a dad, it I go through the grinder. It's emotional, it's mental. I get frustrated, but in the end, you've just got to honestly get back to the fact that golf is mercurial, and sometimes you've just got to allow her to find her own way. And I learned a lot from watching old videos that my wife showed of them when they went for swimming lessons, where the teacher just tossed them in and they'd learn to float and get to the edge. And it's hard for a dad, you know what that's
Yeah.
like. And especially a dad who sort of knows. And I want to say to her, well, do this. But the main thing I'm trying to do of late is to, again, just give her the principle and just let her figure it out by herself. And I've let her for the last few times go to the golf course by herself, which is hard for me. And I want to ask her when she gets back, hey, how was it? But I've resisted that urge, which has been difficult. And then I found, and this to his credit, Brady Riggs said this to me. He said, they'll tell you, because he's got two daughters, and they're both good. He goes, they'll tell you or they'll bring you in if they want to. And so he goes, just try it. And I was like, okay. And so I've let her be. And so she's come back, and once or twice afterwards, she has said to me, well, you should have seen it, or what about this? Instead of me going to try and extricate information from her. Because in hindsight, looking back, the worst thing for me was when I played badly, when my father started pitching 1,000 questions at me after.
Hmm.
And I didn't like that. And so why would she like it from her dad, even though I'm a golf instructor? So I'm trying to be cool about it. It's difficult, I'll be honest. And I'm just trying to keep the whole thing principled and fun.
That's
Um,
that's great
like,
advice.
yes, like yesterday afternoon, we just did 3 holes. It was cold. It was horrible out there. She had one or two bad shots and started losing her head. And I was like, well, this is a perfect time to practice shots from in the woods and stuff. Instead of dropping another ball for her to hit right, I'm like, hey, you might have to play a shot from there. Let's go have some fun from there. And she dug her heels in initially. And then she realized that, hold on, this is an opportunity for me, and this is a chance for me to show off my skill. And like I said about club golfers, skill and technique are two things. Playing different shots and recovering and being creative, that's a skill. And it has to be learned, and you only learn it if you put yourself in that position.
Great, great advice. It's one of the hardest things to do as a dad, though, just to let them make their mistakes, let them fall, let them. We want to protect them so
Yeah,
much. So I,
yeah.
I can appreciate the difficulty there. I'm curious. You mentioned your brother Trevor. What was it like? I mean, him winning the Masters. What did
Mhm.
that do for you? What were you feeling when you were watching it? Were you there? Kind of take me a little bit through that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I was there. I was actually helping him with his putting for the week. So it was nice to see it come about. It's still surreal, because this is an event growing up in South Africa with limited television. There were only really two golf tournaments we'd see live on TV, and that would be the Open Championship and the Masters. and the Masters, because of the time difference, was in the middle of the night. And so one, just get there was one, and then to compete was another, and then to watch him win was unfathomable, really. And what it did for me was made me a lot more popular for a while. I was the brother slash coach to the Masters champ, 2008 Masters champion. So there were indirect consequences from the whole thing. But I think what it really did to me was it just galvanized with me the belief that, anything is possible. Um, you've got to work hard, and a lot of things have got to go your way. He could have done all the right things and not won, but the fact that he made it there is miraculous in itself. And so it just reminds me that anything's possible, and when you have the opportunity, you must just go ahead and try and take it. Because he wasn't playing well coming in, and he got better and better in practice, and then he played solidly on day one and built on that and built on that, and he had the opportunity. On the final day was difficult, really hard weather-wise, and he had two-stroke lead, and that was eliminated, erased within the first three holes. And then just through sheer grit and determination and grinding and attitude and that sort of thing, he built the lead up again and managed to win by 3. And so it taught me about resilience and stick-to-itiveness and dealing with adversity and all those sorts of things that you can't measure. And I'm thankful for the lessons.
All right, before we jump into our final questions that I have for you, there's got to be at least one good Trevor and Mark on the golf course story, maybe when you kind of handed it to them or something. Is there one story that stands out that you could share with us?
Yeah, well, there are a few, but this one sort of popped to mind first, so I'll share it. I was in college over here. I was in All-America. I'd won a couple of events. I was like the main guy, right? And my brother was 13 at the time, and he had just started getting really good and was winning events around the place in South Africa. And so I got home as the hot shot from college, and I had some cool like golf gear, that you wouldn't be able to get in South Africa. And one of it was this I'll never forget, it was a Max Fly, funnily enough, hat that had the pinstripes like the Yankees on. So it had a blue bill and the pinstripes. And he wanted this thing. And I was like, well, if you beat me, you can have it. And so we went out. So he said, we're playing tomorrow. And it turns out that we come down the stretch there, we get to the last hole, and I'm a couple under, and he's got a putt on the last to beat me from about 15 feet. And I'd given it my best. And here's this 13-year-old kid competing. And I remember looking at this going, well, I wonder if he's going to do this, because it wasn't easy. It was like a sliding 15-footer. And he buried this thing like right into the heart.
Oh, my gosh.
And I mean, he pumped his fist, and I actually I was wearing the hat. I gave it to him. And that's when I sort of knew, hold on, there's something special about this kid. He's 13. He had like one chance. He took it. And then he had that putt on the last. And that thing, it had one destination. It was never missing. And so he had this ability. And when I saw this, I was like, wow. And all of a sudden, I guess that pivoted my career, because I suddenly realized I couldn't be the best golfer in the world anymore.
Couldn't even be the best golfer in the family.
That was the problem. So it sort of helped me become a golf instructor, I guess.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right, Mark, this has been so much fun. I'm going to ask you just a few questions just to wrap up that we ask everybody that comes on the show. So first one is, what's your favorite golf movie of all time?
Oh, easy. Caddyshack.
What about, is there a golf book that you love or that you tend to recommend, besides your books, that you tend to recommend to golfers across the world, or that you'd like to recommend to the golfers on the show?
Practical Golf by John Jacobs.
Ah, excellent.
Oh, any Bobby Jones story. I love the Mark Frost books about Jones, to revisit what he did. And he wrote a book called Down the Fairway that's fantastic. I love Golf My Way by Jack Nicklaus. It lives on my bedside table. But Practical Golf by John Jacobs will change your life.
Fantastic. If you could pick a walk-up song to the first tee box, what's your walk-up song?
Sanitarium by Metallica.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
If you can pick your dream foursome, and it could be somebody in the past, somebody in the present. Who are the three guys that you're playing with, and where are you going to play?
Bob Jones. It's hard. It's so hard because I had so many favorite golfers. Gary Player would have to be in there. So Bob Jones, Gary Player, and then I'm somewhere between Greg Norman, Seve Ballesteros, Jack Nicklaus, my dad. So you'll have to give me a
We'll
little
give you an
leeway on
eight
the
some.
third. Yeah, leeway on the third, but I definitely say Jones and Gary Player would be there.
Excellent. If there was only one course that you could play the rest of your life, a course that you've played already, what course would that be?
You know what? To get back to your previous question, I didn't tell you the course.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I would probably say, well, the old course at St Andrews because I've never played it.
Okay.
And I can imagine the stories that Jones and Seve and these guys would tell you about their sojourns around the old course, right? Augusta National would make a lot of sense, but there's a course down in the Golden Isles of Georgia called Sea Island, the seaside course, that just to me is the perfect blend of kind of links and parkland and everything. And it's in a wonderful area, and there are better golf courses than it, I'm certain, in the world, like Royal Melbourne and such. But there's something about the place that just touches my soul. So we'd probably play in the Golden Isles at Seaside.
Okay. What's the best piece of golf advice that you've ever been given that you want to share with the audience?
It's going to sound trite. This will sound really trite, but really, honestly, just to be me. And it was golf advice, but it was also broadcast advice, where a gentleman named Bill Rosinski, who's got the best sounding voice you'd ever hear, and he's on PGA Tour radio and he does football still. He said to me one day, and it sounded like the voice of God in my head. He goes, "Mark, you'll be a great broadcaster. Stop trying to be like somebody else." He goes, "Be you." And I remember our club professional said the same thing about me. He said, because I was always chopping and changing and trying to try my swing to be better. And he came out there one day and he said, "Just swing it like you know how." In fact, that reminds me quickly of another story. And this is golf advice that now it pops to mind. We lived in Arlington, Texas when I was age 15 for a year. And I was practicing golf there on a short practice hole at a course called Rolling Hills. And there was a gentleman member there. His name was Dick Mayer. I think it was the 1956 U.S. Open. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
I didn't know who he was at the time. Elderly gentleman would drive around the cart, had a little sheepdog, collie dog that would drive in the cart with him. And I'd be hitting balls. It was like an 8 or 7 iron. And he'd drive up behind me and just sit there, not say a word, and watch me for a little while. And then he'd drive off. And then the one day he said to me, he goes, I'll never forget, he goes, something to the effect of, "You got a fine golf swing, never change it." And at that stage, we became friendly with David Frost, and he was just coming out on the PGA Tour, and he lived in Dallas, and we spent a lot of time together, and he would come and practice with me and started giving me some tips and stuff. And so I was finagling and tinkering with my swing. Mr. Mayer popped by a few days later, and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing with your golf swing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to do this." And he goes, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, because that's what Ben Hogan did." This was a lesson that Frosty had given me. And he looked at me and said, "Only Ben Hogan could do what Ben Hogan did." And then he said, "I thought I told you not to change your golf swing." And then the pro came over to me and he said, I see Mr. Dick was talking to you." And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "You know who he is?" And I didn't at the time. I wish I'd listened to him, in hindsight. Maybe it would have been different, but everything works out like it should. But it gets to the same lesson where you got to do you, understand who you are, understand what you do, understand the parameters within which you get to work, and be respectful of those. You can't go recreating yourself. You'll always be second best.
I think that's probably one of the best answers that we've had on the show to that, honestly, because
it's long-winded.
It applies to so much more than just your golf swing, and I love it. I love it.
It's the hardest thing. Here's the thing. It's to me. Sorry if I'm verbose now, but it's the hardest thing really to do, because it's easier to go for a lesson and change your golf swing. That is, as I say, it's a little on the lazy side, because it's like, oh, well, I'm going to get better by just adjusting on my swing. There's so many other places you can go before you start adjusting your golf swing. But those are the hard things. Those are the things that take introspection, that take a whole bunch of discipline. And you learn quickly enough because when the stuff starts to hit the fan and you're performing at the highest level, you're going to become the base version of yourself. And if you don't know who that is, then you're out there without a paddle, and it's going to be really, really hard.
So good. Mark, this has been so much fun. Where can everybody go to find, where's the best place for them to connect with you? I know you're everywhere now these days with the show and the broadcasting, but where's the best place they can go?
Social media, I'm at Mark_Immelman on Instagram and Twitter. There's a YouTube page, just search my name. Facebook, it's Mark Immelman Golf Instruction. Got a website, markimmelman.com. And then if you're checking out Skillest, the app, you can find me over there. And then just wherever you get your podcast from, if you're interested, just search On The Mark Golf and you'll find us and everyone else in our global tribe.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for taking the time to come on the show. I've had so much fun today, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
My pleasure. Thanks. I appreciate everything you do. Keep up the great work. I appreciate being on your show.
All right. Thanks for joining us this week on the 18 Strong podcast with Mark Immelman. If you want any more information, any of the links and resources that we talked about in this episode, just go to 18strong.com. Look up episode number 312 with Mark Immelman. You'll find all the information there. Don't forget to go check out Linksole, 18strong.com/Linksole to get your 20% off discount. And if you're ready to make 2021 your strongest year on the golf course and off the golf course, then go check out the 18 Strong Golf Fitness app. Just go to 18strong.com. You'll find it right there on the front page. You can get a 7-day free trial. Check it out. Let me know how it goes. I especially want you to check out the daily motion exercises. If you don't do anything else, do those daily motion exercises for 7 straight days. Tell me you don't feel better, and then we'll go from there. All right. Train hard, practice smart, and play great golf.